All right, episode 35 of Jung Naiv, and who's my guest today?
I'm John Worth, a blogger about European Union things.
Where do you come from, John?
I'm originally from a small and depressing industrial town called Newport in South Wales, but I live in Denmark these days.
So you're British?
I'm British.
Good thing you're here. If you cover a lot of European stories, what's wrong with the British? Why don't they like Europe? Do they like Europe? Do you like Europe?
I like Europe very much. I'm sat here in Berlin having this interview, so I definitely do, and I've lived in many countries. The problem with the British is it's this kind of island nation that wants to set themselves apart. They think they're different somehow.
Are you different?
I'm not really convinced that the British are. I think they think they're more different than they really are. Go outside of Europe somewhere, go to Asia or go to the USA, and then Britain looks much more like a European country.
Okay, let's start off with how long has Britain been in the EU?
Since 1973, that's when the Britain joined.
Why did they join if they didn't like it anyway? or did they like it back then?
They didn't really like it back then either.
Oh.
But Britain was very weak at that point, and that's quite interesting.
Why is that?
The British economy was not really doing very well in the 1950s and 1960s. And the idea was at that point, okay, join the European Union, those countries that were doing economically better, France and Germany particularly, join in with them and it'll help the British economy. So it was done at a time that was kind of a hit to the British psyche that they joined when they were weak. Yeah. Oh. And then along came Margaret Thatcher in the 1980s and tried to kind of get that kind of slightly fake kind of British self-esteem going again.
Okay, and was she successful?
I think getting the self-esteem going again, I think she was partly successful. Making a lot of rich people very rich, she was generally successful as well. She nevertheless managed to, I think to a certain extent, divide the country and then also set Britain on the current track, which is to be much harsher and tougher towards the European Union.
Did Thatcher like Europe and the EU?
At the beginning she did. If you search on Wikipedia, you see a brilliant picture of Margaret Thatcher wearing a T-shirt which has all of the Europe's flags on it that looks, when she was a pro-European.
Even a German flag?
Yeah, all
really?
European flags on it. It's quite a brilliant picture, 1975. But then what happened is she realised actually that the economies of the rest of Europe, France and Germany particularly, had strong social protection as well, and that she didn't like.
Oh no.
And so that's why in the end she started to become harder against the European Union.
Because she doesn't like the social welfare?
Yeah, she viewed that as a burden on Britain's economy in the end. Yeah, she was basically in favour of the market, but not in favour of the social protection that should come with the market, in my view.
But like the EU is not responsible for the social protection.
Well,
right?
it is in part, and increasingly, particularly in the 1990s, some of the rules, like basic rules of how long people are allowed to work, how much maternity or paternity leave they get, some of that stuff is decided at European level as well. That was basically the program of then in the Commission Jacques Delors, who was making that those sorts of decisions to say Europe needs to be more social as well as it being more than just a market.
And she wanted Europe to be a little less social and more market-driven.
Basically, yes.
Okay, so after Thatcher, did the English, start changing their opinion about Europe, or what fueled all this, felt hatred towards us? Towards us, like towards the institution of the EU.
Okay. I think there were a few things. First of all, the British economy did actually do okay in the 1980s and the 1990s, and particularly in the 1990s was a period when Germany was struggling. So Britain looked a bit more healthy during that period. I think now since 2008, maybe it's gone down again.
How did you become healthy again?
Well,
did you change your industries?
Yeah, yes, to a great extent. Basically, shutting down the old industries, mining industries, manufacturing industries, and basically building a lot on financial services.
So you don't mine anymore. You don't manufacture shit
much
anymore?
At all. Well, Britain actually manufactures quite a lot of cars still, but all of the car companies are actually owned by German companies, Japanese companies and others.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Anyway, all these minis on the streets here are actually manufactured in the UK still, even though BMW is owning the firm. Anyway, so that's one. But also the thing is that the British are, I think, deeply sceptical about politics in general. You know? They are they join political parties less than many other Europeans. If you say, do you think politicians are generally to be trusted? They say,
of course.
No, but they're less. They trust their politicians less than most other Europeans do. So then to try to trust this European Union that they don't understand is a very hard thing.
I mean, skepticism in general is not a bad thing, but
yeah, but skepticism is there's a line between skepticism saying we wonder whether this will work, and then trying to find some conclusion or trying to find some answer, and just kind of opposition. And more often than not, it's more opposition and less skepticism, I would say.
Okay. Yeah. So England did quite well in the 90s, beginning of the 2000s,
yep.
And did they realize that it was maybe part due to the construction of the EU, of the market, European market, and all that?
So some people saw that a bit. A lot of British industries were exporting quite strongly to the rest of the European Union. Mm-hmm. There's always been this kind of element of anti-European feeling in the Conservative Party.
Why are they anti-European? Because like German conservatives are very pro-European.
Yeah, but this is the strange thing: is that the people hating the European Union in the UK are mostly on the right. The people hating the European Union in most other European countries are mostly kind of people on the left, like old socialists, basically, who saw the European Union as kind of a market-friendly thing. Yeah. But it's a bit this kind of thing I said about Thatcher, the social protections. There's been this developing idea that the European Union, rather than being a benefit as it was seen in the 1970s, has become a burden on the British economy. Now, I don't think statistically that works. I think a social market economy is what Britain should have, but there's a feeling in the British Conservative Party that somehow, if only Britain were free, then it would be able to do much better economically, and I don't think that's true.
Free as in...
As in like a greater Singapore.
Really?
Yeah. Some conservatives even say that. Yeah.
Free, like so they're not dependent on America, Europe, like
some kind of like greater floating offshore tax haven, low tax, low regulation, low social protection.
And seriously, that's what they want?
That's what they broadly want, yeah. And also tied in with this kind of nostalgia, which is also explains the centre-right Euroscepticism thing. This kind of idea that in the end Britain is still a great global power, has a great military, whatever. So kind of that kind of military could kind of back up the tax haven.
We're in the 21st century. You guys know that.
You do wonder whether some British politicians do know that. Yeah. Anyway.
So who's your prime minister right now?
It's David Cameron at the moment.
What party does he belong to?
He's from the Conservatives, so he's a kind of a child of Thatcher, if you like.
And I guess he doesn't like Europe, like the EU.
We don't really know.
You don't really know? Well, doesn't he tell you guys?
He said, depends who he's talking to. He was giving an interview this weekend.
Quite a politician.
Yeah, well, he was giving an interview this weekend in the Süddeutsche Zeitung, where he said, we're immensely positive about Europe. He would never say that in the UK. He only said it in the translation into German. I think in the end, Cameron is a pragmatist. He realises that British economy needs to still be in the European Union. But he realises the members of his party hate the European Union. So he has to kind of do this sort of balancing act. And where he personally stands in this is very, very hard to tell. He says he wants Britain to still be in, but he wants the European Union to somehow be reformed, and he can't really say how. So therefore he ends up saying all of these kind of smooth words.
He sounds like the male version of Merkel.
Yeah, but he's not
a little bit,
But he's very different than Merkel, in that he does it in this kind of trying to be charismatic way. Merkel's just boring. Yeah. Cameron is not boring. Yeah. And indeed, actually, he has some abilities with words. He can sound kind of quite charming. Like he's sort of got this kind of quasi-aristocratic background. He can kind of reassure people. That's what kind of lets him get away with being so vague, maybe.
But you're saying he can talk the talk, but he can't walk the walk?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, yeah.
So,
I have a little bit of sympathy for him, because his position is very complicated. In his party, they hate the European Union very strongly. Yeah? So it's very, very hard.
And what's the outlook for England? Do you think that some English, or the English people will vote on the whole staying in the EU or not? And will they... say
what will happen?
Out?
Cameron has said there'll be a vote for the British people in or out of the European Union. A referendum will happen by 2017.
In 4 years?
Yeah, well, exactly.
Why in 4 years? Why not tomorrow or in the summer?
Because Cameron's calculation is that the rest of the European Union will have to reform as a result of solving the Eurozone crisis. And at the same time as the rest of the Eurozone integrates, Britain can kind of part remove itself, which was sort of what Cameron kind of looks like he wants. So basically that's the kind of positive way of putting it. The negative way of putting it is kind of Cameron will hold a gun to the head of the leaders of other European countries and say, oi, unless you give me what I want, then we're going to leave. And if he says that, then I think particularly some political leaders in France might say, goodbye then, off you go. There's in Brussels at the moment, there's a very little tolerance for Britain's positions just now.
Thank you.